The Dragon King allowed Lyra Noctis to be dragged before a court that had burned her name. Not killed her, not buried her, burned her. Every royal record in Veyr Ash Court had been scrubbed clean of the girl she once was. Her birthline was ash. Her service mark was ash. Her place in the murdered queen's chamber was ash. Even the small brass nameplate that had once hung outside the lower servants' hall had been melted into a black bead and locked inside the silence vault beneath the throne. Now the court called her the Unrecorded, a woman without proof, a mouth without legal sound. 2 ash guards held her in the center of the throne hall while black banners stirred above them in heatless dragonfire. Around her, nobles in ember silk watched with the careful hunger of people who enjoyed punishment most when law gave it manners. For 3 years, Lyra had not feared death as much as being forgotten. Lord Regent Morkan Voss stood beside the ash throne, silver hair, smooth black gloves folded over his cane. He looked calm enough to be trusted. That was why the court did. Your Majesty Morkant said the woman was found speaking the dead queen's name in the western corridor. A ripple moved through the hall. No one said murdered. No one said witness. No one said the truth. Dragon King Kaelen Veyr sat beneath the crown of blackened horns, one hand closed around the throne arm. He was young for a king, and old from grief. Ember gold eyes fixed on Lyra's face, and something faint moved beneath the skin at his throat. Dragonfire. Restless. Answer the charge, Kaelen said, voice low. The guard shoved at Lyra's shoulder. She bent one knee only because the force took her balance, not because the court owned it. Then she rose again before anyone gave permission. Morkant's mouth tightened. Kaelen noticed. So did Lyra. I did not speak her name to dishonor her, Lyra said. Morkant turned to her, as if correcting a child near an altar. You have no right to speak of royal honor. I served in her chamber. The hall sharpened. Lyra felt the court lean toward her. She had carried the queen's winter tea. She had pinned the queen's mourning veil. She had heard the last words no court record dared preserve. I was there, Lyra said. The night she died. The dragonfire under Kaelen's throat flickered. For one dangerous breath, he was not the king on the ash throne. He was the prince from 3 years ago, standing outside a sealed chamber, while Morkant told him there had been no witness. No girl in the queen's room, no servant named Lyra Noctis, only grief, ash, and court rumor. Morkant had shown him burned records. Kaelen had believed the absence because it was easier than believing the court had erased a living woman. Now, the woman stood before him. Morkant's voice softened. A burned name cannot testify. Lyra looked at him. No, but a guilty man needs her nameless. A few nobles inhaled. Kaelen rose. The movement silenced the Veyr Ash Court. He descended 1 step from the throne, black cloak trailing behind him, dragonfire glowing faintly through the scars at his throat. His eyes did not leave Lyra's face. What did you see? He asked. Morkant's cane struck the floor once. Not loudly. Enough. Your Majesty, he said, the law cannot hear what the records do not name. If you allow an unrecorded woman to accuse the court, every sealed death in Veyr will rise wearing a borrowed mouth. Lyra laughed once. It had no joy in it. Borrowed, she said. You burned my name, then accused me of stealing a voice. Kaelen's jaw tightened. She saw him fight himself. Saw the question in his eyes. Saw the fear Morkant had planted there for 3 years with words like stability, succession, and court survival. Then, Kaelen looked at the nobles behind Morkant. And chose the safer wound. You will not speak of the queen's death before this court, he said. The sentence fell cleanly. Not shouted, not cruelly. That made it worse. Lyra absorbed it without lowering her head. My silence has already paid for your stability. Kaelen flinched. Barely, but enough. Because the queen had once warned him that a throne built on silence would one day mistake peace for ash. Morkant stepped forward before memory could become danger. See how quickly accusation becomes threat. She does not want justice. She wants the king afraid. Lyra turned to Kaelen. A king who fears one woman's memory should ask who taught him to fear it. Morkant's calm cracked at the edge. Only the edge. Remove her, he said. The ash guards tightened their hands around her arms. Kaelen did not give the order. He also did not stop it. That was the kind of guilt a king could hide inside procedure. The first guard reached for the back of Lyra's neck to force her down. The second drew an iron silence band from his belt, black and thin, made for mouths the court wanted closed without leaving marks. Lyra looked only at Kaelen. "If you bind my tongue," she said, "you do not make me false. You only prove what truth costs here." The silence band lifted. Then ash began falling upward, not from the braziers, from the floor. Black flakes rose around Lyra's feet, circling her like the breath of something buried, but not dead. The dragon fire in the hall guttered low. Every ash seal on the walls trembled. The melted black bead beneath the throne began to glow inside the silence vault. Morkant went still. For the first time, fear reached his eyes. "No," he whispered. A shadow crossed the open roof above the throne. Then a black ember raven descended through the broken moonlight and landed on Lyra's shoulder. Not a common bird. A Queen's Ash witness. A forbidden creature said to appear only when a royal death had been buried beneath false law. Its claws settled on Lyra without pain, like recognition. The court recoiled. Kaelen stared at it in horror, because he knew the old stories. The Queen's Ash witness did not answer grief. It answered murder. The raven opened its beak and spoke the name no record was allowed to remember. Lyra Noctis. The silence vault beneath the throne cracked once. Every ash seal in the hall burned white. Then the raven turned its ember eyes toward Morkant and said one more word. "Witness." Morkant's face went bloodless. "Seize it," he ordered, "before it speaks again." The ash guards moved. Kaelen's dragonfire fled black gold at his throat. "No one touches her," he said. The order did not restore her, but it stopped the court from erasing her again. And for the first time in 3 years, the Veyr Ash Court heard the unrecorded woman's name burning its way back into law. The ash guards stopped so suddenly their boots scraped sparks from the black marble. Kaelen's order held the hall for one breath. Only one. Lyra knew the difference between rescue and interruption. Kaelen had not saved her. Not yet. He had only stopped the court from erasing her body before it finished erasing her voice. He had not restored her name. He had not believed her fully. He had only paused the violence long enough for everyone to notice it. Still in Veyr Ash Court, one breath without being erased felt dangerous. For 3 years, Lyra had understood the cruelty of being unrecorded. If she died, no ledger would close beside her name. No bell would toll for her service. No court law would admit she had ever stood in the Queen's chamber. She could vanish in a corridor, and the records would not even have to lie. They would simply remain blank. The Queen's Ash witness stayed on her shoulder, black feathers smoking at the edges, ember eyes fixed on Lord Regent Morkant Voss. Morkant recovered before the court did. "Lower your fire, Your Majesty," he said gently. "The court must not mistake a curse for testimony." Kaelen did not sit. It spoke her name. Names can be stolen. Lyra turned her head enough to look at him. Mine was stolen first. A few nobles shifted. The words had weight now. They had a creature beside them. They had ash seals burning white above them and the silence vault cracking beneath the throne like a mouth trying to open. Morkant's eyes stayed calm, but his gloved hand tightened on his cane. "That thing is not the Queen." The raven's claws flexed lightly against Lyra's shoulder. "Not hurting, answering." "No," Lyra said. "It is what came because she cannot." The hall went colder. Kaelen looked at her, and the dragon fire beneath his throat flickered again. "What do you mean?" Morkant moved before Lyra could answer. "She means to draw you into treason by grief. That is what the unrecorded do, Your Majesty. They borrow sacred symbols because no record will carry them." Lyra faced the court. "A record did carry me. You burned it." "The law cannot hear ashes," Morkant said. "Mercy toward the unrecorded is dangerous, Your Majesty. It teaches the law to remember what it already judged unworthy." Something in Kaelen's face tightened. The Queen's Ash witness opened its beak. A sound came out, not a cry, not a word, but the scrape of a quill across burned parchment. Every ash seal along the wall trembled. White cracks spread through the black wax of old court records mounted behind the throne. The nobles drew back. Kaelen stared at the seals. "Morkant." The regent bowed his head. "Forbidden ash reacts to fear. Nothing more." Lyra laughed once quietly. "Then why is it only frightening the guilty?" Morkant's gaze snapped to her. For the first time, Kaelen saw it clearly, not irritation, not offense, but recognition. Morkant looked at Lyra as if she were not a mad woman at all, as if she were a door he had thought sealed. The realization touched Kaelen's face, but not enough to become trust. Not yet. "Bring the ash cage," Morkant ordered. Kaelen turned. "No, for the bird, Your Majesty. You forbade them from touching her." The court heard the distinction. So did Lyra. Her eyes moved to Kaelen. There was no accusation in them this time, only tired understanding. It cut deeper than anger. "You found a smaller sentence already," she said. Kaelen's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to keep this court from tearing itself apart." "No," Lyra said. "You are trying to keep it whole without asking what it is made of." The Queen's ash witness lowered its head beside her cheek, as if it approved the wound she had placed in the room. 2 ash wardens entered from the side arch carrying a black iron cage woven with ember chains. The bars glowed faintly, built to hold things born from royal flame. Around them, the court began to breathe again, comforted by tools, rituals, and men who had always known how to imprison what they could not explain. Morkant pointed to the raven. "Contain it before it speaks another lie." Lyra's body went still. Kaelen saw the wardens advance and turned on them. "Do not move." Dragonfire flared beneath his throat as he stepped down from the dais. The wardens advanced anyway. The Queen's ash witness spread its wings. Ash exploded outward. Not flame that devoured flesh. Not heat that burned skin. Something older and colder. A storm of black feathers and white ember light swept across the floor, striking the iron cage before it reached Lyra. The bars cracked. The ember chains turned grey and fell apart like dead snakes. The wardens staggered back. The raven rose from Lyra's shoulder and circled once above her head. Its wings cast a crown of ash shadow over her hair, and beneath that shadow, the iron silence band in the guard's hand crumbled into dust. The court gasped. Kaelen looked at the ruined band and understood too late that he had almost watched the court finish what Morkant began 3 years ago. The Queen's ash witness landed again, this time between Lyra and the throne, between the unrecorded woman and the king who had nearly let them silence her twice. Kaelen looked from the ruined band to Lyra. For one breath, shame moved through him so openly the court could see it. Morkant saw it too. "Your Majesty," he said, voice low, dangerous beneath its calm, "if you let this continue, the court will believe you place a nameless woman above crown law." Kaelen's eyes did not leave Lyra. The raven named her. A monster named her. Lyra stepped forward before Kaelen could answer. The raven moved with her. "Then your law has less courage than a monster." The words struck the hall like a spark in dry ash. The silence vault beneath the throne cracked again. This time something small rolled out from the split at the base of the blackened steps. A bead, blackened brass, melted nearly smooth. Lyra knew it before it stopped at her feet. Her nameplate. The one that had once hung outside the lower servants' hall. For 3 years, she had dreamed of touching it. For 3 years, she had told herself it was only metal, only proof, only another thing stolen. Now it lay before the entire court. Lyra did not reach for it. For 3 years, she had dreamed of that nameplate so often that part of her feared her hand would pass through it like smoke. Kaelen stared at the bead and understood that absence had not been proof. It had been a crime. The Queen's ash witness tapped the melted brass once with its beak. The bead split open. Inside, protected beneath layers of burned brass, a tiny strip of royal parchment unfurled in ash-white light. Kaelen stepped closer despite himself. Morkant whispered, "Do not read it." Lyra looked up. The strip of parchment burned brighter. Not with her name this time, with the murdered Queen's final command. The royal parchment did not reveal its command all at once. It burned slowly in ash-white light, every letter forming, as if the dead Queen herself were forcing the law to remember how to read. No one in Veyr Ash Court breathed loudly. Even the dragonfire along the walls bent inward, thin and pale, as though the flames wanted to witness what the records had hidden. Lyra stood above the melted nameplate and did not reach for it. Not yet. For 3 years she had dreamed of proof. But proof in Veyr was dangerous. Proof could be burned. Proof could be twisted. Proof could be turned into another reason to punish the woman who carried it. Kaelen stepped down another stair. Read it. Morkant's cane struck the marble. "No." The single word cracked through the hall. Kaelen turned to him. "You told me. The dead left no command." Morkant's face remained composed, but his knuckles whitened over the cane. "Because no lawful command can survive outside the royal record. That strip is ash fragment. It has no seal, no witness, no legal breath." The Queen's ash witness opened one black wing. The ash seals above the throne burned brighter. Lyra looked at Morkant. "It has a witness." Morkant's eyes moved to her. "A creature born from forbidden ash." "No," Lyra said. "A creature born because forbidden men burned the truth." A low murmur moved through the nobles. Kaelen saw Morkant's jaw tighten, and felt with sick clarity how many times he had mistaken that tightness for wisdom. For 3 years the regent had stood beside him with answers polished smooth. No witness, No servant, no name, no command, no murder worth reopening if the kingdom wished to survive. Kaelen had wanted survival. He had called silence peace because he had not been the one buried inside it. The parchment finished, burning its message into the air. Not a long decree, only 9 words. Bring my ash to the girl who remembers fire. The court stared. Lyra's throat closed. The girl who remembers fire. Queen Auralyn had called her, that once not as a title but as a kindness, after Lyra remembered which hearth the queen liked, lit on winter mornings. No one in the palace had ever made memory sound like a gift before. To the queen, Lyra had not been a servant-shaped shadow. She had been a girl who noticed warmth. She knew the phrase, not from law. From the queen's private chamber on the last night when smoke crawled under the door, and Queen Auralyn Veyr had pressed a small ash-black casket into Lyra's hands. Memory struck Lyra so sharply she swayed. Kaelen moved half a step toward her. The queen's ash witness turned its ember eyes on him. He stopped. Lyra noticed. So did the court. That small restraint hurt more than if he had touched her. It meant he was learning, but learning did not undo the years when he had not asked what she survived. Morkant spoke quickly, a sentimental phrase. Nothing more. The late queen was fevered before her death. Lyra lifted her head. She was not fevered. Morkant's smile was careful. You were a chamber servant. Grief can make smoke look like murder. I know the difference between smoke and a hand over someone's mouth. The hall went silent. Kaelen's face emptied. Morkant's eyes sharpened. Lyra regretted the words the moment they left her, not because they were false, but because she had given the room more truth than it deserved before she understood what the raven wanted next. Kaelen's voice came rough. You saw that Lyra looked at him. Once she had imagined telling him, not before a court, not with guards at her arms and Morkant breathing law into every corner. She had imagined finding the prince in a corridor, putting the queen's casket into his hands, saying, she loved you enough to leave proof. Instead, Morkant's men had reached her before she reached him. I saw enough to lose my name, she said. The words struck him harder than accusation. Morkant turned to the nobles. Hear her. She admits she withheld a royal death claim for 3 years. If she truly served the queen, she should have brought the proof before the court, not hidden behind burned records and borrowed birds. Lyra laughed softly. You burned the woman who could speak it. Morkant's gaze cooled. I tried to carry her command to him, Lyra said. Your men reached me before I reached the prince. By morning I had no name left to sign, no record left to stand on, and no law left willing to hear me. Kaelen went very still. Morkant's mouth tightened. The court burned a false record, he said. You burned my birth line, a dangerous fabrication. You burned my service mark, a clerical correction. You melted my nameplate and hid it under the throne. Morkant's smile thinned. And yet here it is, conveniently returned by a curse. The queen's ash witness gave a harsh, ember-edged cry. The melted brass bead split wider. Inside the parchment, a second layer unfolded smaller than the first. This one bore a thumbprint in dried gold ash. Kaelen went still. He knew that mark. Every Veyr ruler was marked at birth with dragon gold beneath the right thumb. Queen Auralyn had used that mark only for commands meant to survive betrayal. Kaelen whispered, that is her royal print. Morkant's face hardened. It is an imitation. Kaelen looked at him. You told me nothing survived, because nothing lawful did, or because you made sure law would not recognize it. The first true line between king and regent opened. Lyra felt the court shift around it, but Morkant was not finished. If that girl carried a queen's command, he said, then she concealed royal evidence. By ash law, concealment in a regicide inquiry is treason. Kaelen turned sharply. She had no name to present evidence under. Morkant bowed slightly. Then perhaps she should have remained silent. The cruelty landed cleanly. Lyra bent at last, not to kneel, to pick up the melted nameplate. The brass was warm against her palm, real, scarred. Hess. The queen's ash witness lowered its head until its beak touched the royal thumbprint. A memory opened in the air above Lyra's hand. Queen Auralyn appeared through smoke and gold ash, one hand clutching the casket, her eyes fixed on someone beyond the vision. Not Lyra. Not Kaelen. Someone standing over her. The queen's lips moved. The court leaned forward. Then her voice emerged, broken, but clear. Do not trust more. The black seal set into the head of Morkant's cane flashed once. Morkant struck the cane against the floor. The memory shattered into black ash, and from beneath the throne, something inside the silence vault began to scream. The scream beneath the throne drove the court backward like heat from an open furnace. It was not human. It was not entirely dragon either. It rose from the silence vault in broken layers, metal grieving, ash burning, and something ancient clawing against a law that had kept it buried for too long. The black marble trembled beneath Lyra's feet. The melted nameplate in her palm grew warm enough to make her fingers tighten around it. The Queen's Ash Witness spread its wings. Kaelen turned toward the throne, dragon fire flaring under his skin. Open the vault. Morkant's cane struck the floor before any guard could move. No. The word cut cleanly through the scream. Kaelen faced him. Something is alive beneath my throne. Something is reacting to her, Morkant said, turning his calm gaze toward Lyra. Your Majesty, the Queen's memory was stable until the Unrecorded touched that cursed fragment. Lyra looked at him through the ash drifting between them. You broke the memory when it began to name you. I stopped treason from wearing the Queen's voice. The court seized on that sentence because it gave fear a shape. Treason, Queen's voice, Unrecorded. Lyra felt the old trap closing. Make the truth sound illegal. Make the witness sound dangerous. Make the erased woman responsible for the scream of what had been buried. Kaelen heard it too. His jaw tightened. Do not call her that again. Morkant's eyes moved to him. What would you have me call a woman? The records do not recognize. Kaelen's answer did not come fast enough. Lyra felt the delay like a hand around her throat. She spoke before he could repair it. Call me what the raven called me. The Queen's Ash Witness gave a low, embered cry. Several nobles flinched. Morkant smiled softly. There. You see, she asks the court to accept a monster's naming over lawful record. The lawful record burned me, Lyra said. The lawful record protected the throne from panic. No, Lyra answered. It protected powerful men from consequence. A murmur passed through the hall. Morkant turned that murmur into a weapon. Then let the court test whether her tongue carries truth or revenge. Kaelen's eyes narrowed. What test? The Ash Tongue trial. The nobles went still. Lyra knew the name. Every servant in Veyr knew it, though none were ever meant to survive it. It was an old court rite used for traitors, false prophets, and witnesses whose words threatened succession. If the accused spoke truth, ash would turn white. If the accused lied, ash would fill the mouth and seal it forever. Kaelen stepped down fully from the dais. No, Morkant bowed his head. You cannot forbid a law built into the Ash Throne. I can forbid its use. Not when the charge touches the murder of a queen. Morkant's voice softened, almost pitying. If she claims Queen Auralyn was murdered, let her speak under ash. If she tells truth, the trial will honor her. If she lies, the kingdom will be spared her poison. Lyra laughed, once quiet and hollow. How generous. Your law offers to honor me after threatening to choke me. Kaelen looked at her. The shame in his face was sharper now because he understood the trap, and still did not yet know how to break it without breaking the court itself. Morkant saw that weakness. Your Majesty, he said, if you protect her from trial, every noble here will believe you fear what her words may expose. Kaelen's dragon fire pulsed black gold. Perhaps I do, he said. The hall stilled. Morkant's expression tightened. Kaelen looked at the nobles, then at the guards, then back at Morkant. Not because I fear her, because I am beginning to fear what this court has called law. For the first time, the regent had to measure him differently, but Lyra did not soften. You are beginning, she said. I was erased completely. The words struck him and stayed there. Kaelen lowered his voice. Lyra, do not make my name sound like regret when it still has no protection. He stopped. Good, she thought. Let him stop. The scream beneath the throne changed. It thinned into a sobbing scrape like claws against iron. The Queen's Ash Witness hopped from Lyra's shoulder to the floor and stood between her and Morkant's cane. Its ember eyes fixed on the black seal set into the cane's head. Morkant noticed. So did Kaelen. Before either could speak, Lord Regent, Morkant lifted his free hand. Bring the ash basin. 4 attendants entered, carrying a shallow bowl of blackened silver. Inside lay old ash from the throne, brazier dark and fine as powdered bone. They set it before Lyra. The basin smoked. Kaelen moved toward it. Morkant's voice sharpened. Touch it and the court will say you corrupted the trial for her. Kaelen stopped. Again. Lyra saw the pain cross his face. Again. This time she did not wait for him. She stepped toward the basin herself. The Queen's ash witness beat its wings once, scattering black sparks over the marble, but Lyra did not step back. "Then let the court record this," Kaelen said, his voice carrying across the hall. "The trial proceeds under the name Lyra Noctis, not under the word Unrecorded." The words struck the hall harder than any fire. They did not restore the 3 years stolen from her, but they forced the law to hold her name while it tried to judge her. Morkan's jaw tightened. A name spoken by a curse remains legally disputed. Kaelen's eyes burned. Then dispute it after the court writes it down. Lyra looked at him. She did not thank him. She only turned back to the basin because even a king's late courage did not make the ash less dangerous. "I will speak," she said, "but I will speak as Lyra Noctis, not as the Unrecorded." Kaelen's face went pale. "You do not have to submit to a law made by the men who erased you." Lyra looked at him over the ash basin. "No," she said. "I have to show your court what it asks women to survive before it calls them believable." The hall went silent. Morkan dipped one gloved finger into the ash and drew a black line across the rim of the basin. "Then speak the forbidden claim," he said. "Name yourself. Name what you saw. Name the Queen's murderer, if you dare." The basin ignited. Ash-white flame rose toward Lyra's mouth, but before it touched her lips, the edges of the black ash turned white, and from inside the silence vault, a buried dragon opened its eye. The silence vault stopped screaming and began to breathe. Every ash seal beneath the throne pulsed once, then again like a buried heart, remembering it had been caged under law instead of stone. The eye inside the vault opened wider, a slit of ancient gold visible through the crack at the base of the blackened steps. The court recoiled. Morkant did not. He lifted his cane toward the ash basin. "Continue the trial." Kaelen turned on him. "There is a dragon beneath my throne. There is a sealed royal remnant responding to unlawful testimony." Lyra stood before the basin with ash-white flame rising toward her mouth. The heat did not burn her skin, but it made the air taste like old verdicts, like every voice the court had decided was safer swallowed. Morkan's voice softened. "Speak Lyra Noctis if the king insists on writing the name. Let the ash decide whether that name carries truth or treason." The way he said her name made it sound like a trap closing politely. Lyra looked at the basin. For 3 years, she had been punished for silence. Now she was being punished for speech. The court wanted the shape of truth, but only after placing a blade beneath her tongue. The Queen's ash witness hopped onto the basin's rim. Its ember eyes met hers. Not comforting, commanding. Kaelen took one step closer. "If the ash harms her, Lyra cut him off. Then your court will call it justice." His face tightened. She did not look away. "Do not threaten consequences after allowing the danger to be prepared." The words struck him in front of everyone. "Good. Let the court hear it. Let them hear that his concern had arrived with ash already at her lips." Kaelen lowered his voice. "Then tell me what I can do." The question moved through the hall like a dangerous crack. Morkan's eyes sharpened. Lyra looked at the king who had spent 3 years protected by absence. He was asking now, but not from command. Not from pride. From a guilt that had finally learned it could not dress itself as authority. "Stop asking me to survive your law quietly," she said. Kaelen absorbed that. Then he turned to the scribes frozen near the lower pillars. "Record every word spoken in this hall." Morkan's cane struck the marble. "The trial record belongs to the Regency Court." "No," Kaelen said. "Tonight, it belongs to the throne. The throne is not above ash law." Kaelen's dragonfire flared black gold and furious. "Then ash law will be witnessed by the throne it claims to protect." The scribes began writing with shaking hands. It was not enough to heal her, but it cost him something. Lyra could see that in the court's faces. Nobles who had hidden behind Morkant's law now looked at Kaelen as if he had pulled a stone from the palace wall and asked whether the roof was honest. Morkan smiled faintly. "Very well. Let the throne witness her lie." Lyra faced the basin. The ash-white flame rose. "Name yourself," Morkan said. Lyra's fingers tightened around the melted brass nameplate. "I am Lyra Noctis." The flame bent toward her mouth. The black ash along the basin turned white. A sound moved beneath the throne. Not a scream this time. A growl. Morkan's jaw hardened. "Name your service." Lyra swallowed the taste of smoke. "I served Queen Auralyn Veyr in her private chamber." The flame climbed higher. White ash scattered across the basin, bright as bone under moonless fire. A noblewoman whispered truth. Morkant's gaze cut toward her, and she fell silent. Kaelen heard it anyway. His face shifted as if the word had entered him and found all the places he had refused to let it go before. Morkant lifted his chin. Name what you claim to have seen. Lyra's breath caught. The Queen's ash witness spread one wing beside her face. She saw it again, the Queen's chamber under smoke. Queen Auralyn's hand pushing the ash-black casket against her chest, a dark figure near the bed, the sound of breath being stolen under velvet. Lyra spoke. I saw Queen Auralyn dying by another hand. The basin erupted. Ash-white fire shot upward, not into Lyra's mouth, but around her, circling her like a witness ring. The court staggered back. The dragon eye beneath the throne blazed gold. Morkant's voice cracked for the first time. Seal the vault. No guard moved. He turned. Seal it. Kaelen stepped between him and the throne. The hall froze. Morkant's eyes narrowed. Move, your majesty. Kaelen's face was pale with fury. How many times did you use my grief to make obedience sound like wisdom? Morkant's expression smoothed. I kept your kingdom alive. You kept me blind. The words broke something in the hall. Not the law yet, but the fear around it. Morkant leaned closer, voice low. If that vault opens, it will not only accuse me, it will accuse your reign. Every year you sat on this throne, she was nameless beneath it. Kaelen flinched. Lyra saw it. So did Morkant. But Kaelen did not move away. He turned to Lyra, and the shame in his eyes was no longer hidden behind command. He is right. The court stilled. Kaelen's voice carried. If she was erased beneath my throne, then my throne is guilty of carrying the silence. Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted those words 3 years ago. Tonight they were only the beginning of a debt. Morkant hissed. You would stain your crown for her. Kaelen looked back at him. No, I would stop using the crown to hide the stain. He drew the black gold signet blade from his belt and struck the seal at the base of the silence vault. Dragon fire burst through the crack. The buried eye opened fully. The entire court dropped into darkness except for the white fire around Lyra and the gold glare beneath the throne. From inside the vault, an ancient dragon voice filled the hall. Bring me the burned name. The Queen's ash witness turned its head toward Lyra. Then every ash seal in the court began to write the same forbidden word, Noctis. The court tried to scrape the name from the walls. No one admitted it. No one gave the order. But 3 ash scribes lunged toward the nearest seal with black knives drawn, their faces white with panic, as if cutting the word from wax might cut it from truth. The Queen's ash witness screamed. Every knife turned to ash before it touched the seal. Noctis burned brighter. Lyra stood inside the ring of white flame, the melted nameplate hot in her palm. Her restored name had become too large for silence now. It lived on the walls beneath the throne, in the cracks of the vault. In the eyes of every noble who had once believed absence was proof. Kaelen looked at the written name, then at Lyra. Not as a king studying a charge. As a man realizing the woman before him had been hidden in plain sight because the court feared what her existence could wake. Morkant stepped into the glow of the vault. Enough. Noctis is a forbidden house name. Lyra's head turned slowly. My family was not a house, no, Morkant said. It was a line of ash keepers. Servants entrusted with dead flame, dead secrets, and dead loyalty. A useful line until it forgot its place. Kaelen's eyes sharpened. You knew her bloodline. I knew the danger attached to it. You told me she never existed. Morkant's expression remained composed. I told you no lawful person by that name remained. The difference was small and monstrous. Lyra felt it enter the court. For 3 years they had called her Unrecorded, as if the records had failed by accident. Now Morkant had admitted the absence was chosen with care. Kaelen took a step toward the regent. You burned her because her name could open the vault. Morkant did not answer. He did not need to. The silence vault breathed again. Bring me the burned name, the buried dragon voice said. The white flame around Lyra lowered, waiting. Kaelen turned to her. Lyra, do not give it anything, unless you choose to. The gentleness in the warning almost hurt. Because once she had begged the court with her silence to ask whether she chose anything. Now choice had arrived in front of everyone dressed as danger. Lyra looked at him. You keep warning me about the risks, after your court has made risk the only road left. His face tightened. I know. No, she said. You are learning. The words struck him, but he did not defend himself. Good. The Queen's ash witness hopped from the basin to the cracked floor before the vault. It lowered its ember beak to the melted nameplate in Lyra's hand, not touching it, only pointing. Morkan's voice cut through the hall. If she opens that vault, she accepts the charge of forbidden witness binding. By Ash law, any servant who binds royal testimony to her own name commits treason against the throne. Lyra almost smiled. There it was again. Law turning survival into crime. Kaelen faced Morkant. If the Queen bound testimony to her, then the crime belongs to whoever made that the only way testimony could survive. Morkant's eyes cooled. Careful, Your Majesty. That argument leads to your throne. Kaelen's face did not change. Then let it. A murmur broke through the nobles. Not approval. Fear. The throne had finally spoken against its own comfort. Lyra closed her fingers around the nameplate. It pulsed once. Her memory opened, not in the air, not on the floor, but inside the nameplate itself. Lyra saw Queen Auralyn's chamber on the night of smoke, saw the Queen's hands trembling as she pressed the ash-black casket to Lyra's chest. If I die, the Queen whispered in memory, they will burn the witness before it can speak. Memory Lyra shook her head younger, terrified. Your Majesty, I am no one. Queen Auralyn touched her cheek. You are Lyra Noctis, she said, and Ash remembers the name brave enough to carry it. The memory closed. Lyra's breath broke once. Only once. The court had stolen many things, but this cut differently. The Queen had not used her because she was convenient. She had trusted her because she had seen her. Morkan's face hardened. An imitation of tenderness. Nothing more. Lyra looked at him. You have always hated anything you could not file under law. No, he said softly. I hate women who mistake being noticed for being chosen. Kaelen moved before Lyra could answer. One step. Dragonfire flared. Do not speak to her again, as if your cruelty is wisdom. Morkant looked at him, almost pleased. At last, a king defending his witness. How touching. 3 years late, but touching. Kaelen flinched. Lyra did not. She stepped past him toward the vault. The Queen's ash witness rose and landed on her shoulder again, its feathers warm now, instead of smoking cold. Lyra knelt before the crack beneath the throne. Not to the court, to the buried thing the Queen had left behind. She set the melted nameplate against the vault seal. The brass softened. The letters of her name rose from it in white fire. Lyra Noctis. The vault opened another inch. Golden light poured through the crack, illuminating a massive dragon eye behind black ash glass. Around it curled chains of burned law, each link stamped with Morkan's regent seal. Kaelen whispered he chained it. No, Lyra said, staring at the dragon. He chained her witness. The buried dragon's eye fixed on Lyra. Its voice filled the court, older than the throne and heavier than grief. Name bearer found. Every ash seal shattered. Morkant stepped back. For the first time, he looked not afraid of Lyra's accusation. He looked afraid of her existence. The dragon behind the glass breathed once, and the entire court filled with Queen Auralyn's last words. Only Lyra Noctis may wake my witness. The court did not cheer when Queen Auralyn's last words filled the hall. It recoiled, because the truth had not arrived as a rumor, a servant's accusation, or a cursed bird's cry. It had arrived in the murdered queen's own voice, and it had chosen the woman Veyr Ash Court had spent 3 years teaching the law to forget. Lyra Noctis stood before the silence vault with the Queen's ash witness on her shoulder and her melted nameplate glowing in her hand. Behind the black ash glass, the buried dragon eye watched her, waiting. Morkant moved first. Do not let her touch the vault again, he ordered. No guard obeyed quickly enough. Kaelen turned dragonfire rising under his skin. Stand down. Morkant's voice stayed calm, which made it more dangerous. Your Majesty, the Queen's final command has named her as a key. Not a witness. A key. If she opens that vault without court sanction, she controls royal testimony. That is not justice. That is seizure of the throne's memory. A frightened murmur moved through the nobles. Lyra almost smiled. There it was again. When they needed her silent, she was no one. When they needed what she carried, she became dangerous enough to regulate. She turned toward the court. You burned my name because you said it had no value. Now you fear what it can open. Morkant looked at her with soft contempt. A servant who holds a knife is still not a surgeon. No, Lyra said. But a murderer who holds law is still a murderer. The Queen's ash witness gave a low, embered cry. Kaelen stepped closer but stopped before entering the broken ring of ash-white flame around her. Lyra. She looked at him. Her name sounded different in his mouth now. less like regret. More like something he was afraid of breaking. That made it hurt. "You do not have to wake it for them," he said. "For them?" Lyra asked. His jaw tightened. "For me either." The court heard the words. Morkant did too. A small, sharp satisfaction passed through Lyra. Not because it healed anything, but because Kaelen had finally said something that cost him power instead of protecting it. Morkant struck his cane once. Sentiment has no place in succession testimony. Kaelen did not look away from Lyra. Neither does Erasure. Morkant's eyes cooled. If she refuses the Queen's command, she proves she is unworthy of it. Lyra turned toward the buried dragon. The golden eye behind the glass did not accuse her. It did not command. It simply waited with the terrible patience of something that had been chained beneath men's laws, and still knew the difference between obedience and choice. For 3 years, Lyra had survived by being silent enough not to be killed and stubborn enough not to become what they named her. Now they wanted her to open the vault in the same hall that had tried to bind her mouth. No, not like this. She lifted the melted nameplate. The white letters of her name burned across the brass. "I will not wake Queen Auralyn's witness as a tool for the court that buried her." Morkant's smile sharpened. "Then you defy the Queen?" Lyra looked at him. "No. I defy the men who would use her final command while still refusing to honor why she gave it to me." The nobles fell silent. Kaelen's face changed. He understood. Too late, but he understood. "You are leaving," he said. Lyra stepped away from the vault. The dragon eye behind the glass narrowed not in anger but recognition. The ash-white flame lowered around her feet as if making a path. Morkant's calm cracked. If she leaves, the witness remains sealed. The court remains unstable. The Queen's death remains disputed. Lyra walked past the basin. Then perhaps the court should have considered that before burning the only name that could open it. Kaelen moved one step after her. "Where will you go?" She stopped, not because he asked, because part of her remembered the prince he had been before the court taught him to fear truth. The young man standing outside the Queen's chamber, ash on his sleeves, asking who had seen his mother last. She had tried to reach him then. She had failed. Or they had made sure she failed. To the lower ash chapel, Lyra said, where servants without names were sent to be mourned by no one. Morkant went still. Kaelen noticed. "Why does that frighten you?" "It does not," Morkant said too quickly. Lyra looked back at the regent. "It should." The Queen's ash witness spread its wings, scattering black sparks across the marble. Lyra crossed the throne hall, the court parting before her. No one bowed. No one apologized. No one deserved to touch the shape of her dignity yet. At the doors, Kaelen's voice followed her. "Lyra." She paused without turning. "I will open the records," he said. "All of them." Her hand tightened around the nameplate. "Do not open them for me," she answered. "Open them because your throne has been feeding on silence." Then she stepped out of Veyr Ash Court. The Queen's ash witness flew after her, landing again on her shoulder beneath the blackened arch. Behind her, every heatless dragonfire in the throne hall went out. And deep beneath the ash throne, one chain around Queen Auralyn's dragon witness snapped. The darkness in Veyr Ash Court did not feel empty. It felt accused. Every heatless dragonfire along the walls had gone out the moment Lyra crossed the doors, leaving only the faint gold glare from the cracked silence vault beneath the throne. Nobles stood frozen in their ember, silks suddenly small without flame to flatter them. Morkant used the fear first. "She has extinguished the court," he said. "Your Majesty, if you do not order her seized now, every lord in Veyr will believe an unrecorded woman can starve the throne of fire." Kaelen turned slowly. The words struck differently now. "Unrecorded. Not a condition. A crime." "Say that word again," Kaelen said, "and I will have the scribe's record who taught this court to use it." Morkant's face remained calm, but the silence around him changed. Kaelen looked to the ash scribe still trembling near the pillars. "Bring the burned rolls." No one moved. He raised his voice. "All of them." Lord Veyron, one of Morkant's loyal judges, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the burned rolls are sealed under regent authority." Kaelen looked at him. "Then regent authority ends at this breath." A shock passed through the hall. Morkant's cane tapped once. "Careful. A king who opens old ashes may find his own reign buried under them." Kaelen descended the final step from the throne. "Then let it be buried honestly." The words cost him. Lyra was not there to hear them. That made them cleaner. The scribes obeyed at last. They brought iron boxes from the side archives, each stamped with black ash seals. Kaelen broke the first seal himself. Heatless smoke curled out, carrying the smell of burned parchment and hidden names. Inside lay pages half destroyed by court fire, birth lines, service marks, witness records, all blackened at the edges. Kaelen lifted one brittle sheet. Read. The nearest scribe swallowed. Your Majesty, read. The scribe's voice shook. Lower chamber servant. Assigned to Queen Auralyn Veyr. Name removed under silence decree. Kaelen's fingers tightened. Original name. The scribe looked at Morkant. Kaelen saw it. So did every noble. Look at me, the king said. The scribe bowed his head. Lyra Noctis. The silence vault breathed beneath the throne. Kaelen turned to the court. Write this into the living record. Lyra Noctis served Queen Auralyn Veyr. Lyra Noctis carried a royal command. Lyra Noctis is a lawful witness before the Ash Throne. Morkant's voice cut softly. You cannot make law from guilt. No, Kaelen said, but I can stop letting guilt hide behind law. The Queen's Ash witness was gone with Lyra, but its absence seemed to watch them. More rolls opened. More names appeared. Not many. Enough. Servants, ash-keepers, corridor guards, low-born scribes who had stood too near royal truth and been burned into absence. The court had not erased Lyra alone. It had built a machine for making witnesses disappear. Kaelen read until his voice roughened. Then he found the decree. The page was whole. Too whole. Protected, not damaged. At the bottom, Morkant's black seal gleamed like an old wound. Kaelen read the first line aloud. By Regent command, all persons attached to Queen Auralyn's final chamber are to be stripped of legal voice until succession stability is secured. The court went still. He looked up at Morkant. You did not investigate her death. Morkant's mouth curved faintly. I preserved a kingdom in shock. You buried witnesses. I contained panic. Kaelen lifted the decree. You contained truth. Morkant's eyes cooled, and you benefited from it. Your Majesty. The blow landed. Kaelen did not deny it. The hall waited for him to protect himself. He did not. Yes, he said. I did. A murmur broke open. Kaelen let it. Then he turned toward the moonless doorway through which Lyra had left. Open the lower ash chapel. Morkant's calm cracked. That chapel is not for royal entry. Kaelen's eyes burned black gold. Tonight it is. The lower ash chapel lay beneath the servant wing, below the kitchens, below the ash laundries, in a place where the palace heat never reached. Lyra stood there alone when Kaelen arrived, surrounded by shelves of small black urns with no names. The Queen's ash witness perched above her on a broken arch. Lyra did not turn when he entered. I told you to open the records, she said. Not follow me. I did open them. That does not answer why you are here. Kaelen stopped several paces away. Because the records led here. Only then did she turn. The chapel's cold light made her face look carved from grief and ash. No, the records were always here. You finally followed them. He accepted that. No defense. No softening. I read your name into the living record, he said. I read your service. I read your right to witness. Her eyes flickered. Pain, not gratitude. 3 years late. Yes. Still not repair. No, Kaelen said. Only the first piece. The Queen's ash witness dropped from the arch and landed before the central altar, where a shallow bowl of grey ash waited untouched. Its beak struck the stone once. The nameless urns began to tremble. One by one, white letters appeared across them, names burning back through the black. Lyra's breath caught. Then the central altar split open. Inside lay Queen Auralyn's ash-black casket, and across its sealed lid, written in the Queen's own gold ash, were 5 words, Let Lyra coos the fire. The ash-black casket did not open for Kaelen. It did not open when the Dragon King stepped closer. It did not open when his dragon fire flared across the cold chapel floor, black gold and powerful enough to make every nameless urn tremble on its shelf. The casket waited. For Lyra. She stood before the split altar, with the Queen's ash witness perched beside her, and the restored names burning softly through the dark chapel. Around them the nameless dead were nameless no longer. Servants, ash-keepers, corridor guards, chamber, girls, scribes, all the people Veyr Ash Court had treated as removable, had begun to return in white letters across black stone. Lyra's own name burned inside her palm through the melted brass nameplate. Not painful, present. Kaelen looked at the sealed casket, then at her. The Queen gave the choice to you. Lyra's eyes stayed on the gold ash words across the lid. Do not make that sound clean. He went still. She gave me a choice, Because your court took every other one first. The blow landed, and Kaelen accepted it. You are right. No defense. No explanation. Only the words. That made the ache in Lyra's chest sharper, not softer. The Queen's Ash witness gave a low, embered cry. From the chapel entrance, a guard's voice rang out. Your Majesty. Kaelen turned. Lord Regent Morkant Voss entered the lower Ash Chapel with 6 Ash Wardens behind him, and half the court gathered like frightened ghosts in the corridor. His silver hair remained perfect. His black cane tapped once against the stone. You were warned, Morkant said. No royal hand may disturb the lower dead. Lyra looked at him. Then it is fortunate my hand is not royal. Morkant's eyes moved to the casket. That was never meant for you. The Queen disagreed. The Queen was dying. She was still wiser than the men who survived her. A ripple moved through the servants watching from the corridor. Kaelen stepped between Morkant and the altar. You will not take the casket. Morkant smiled faintly. I do not need to take it. I only need the court to understand what she is doing. He turned toward the gathered nobles. A burned servant, newly restored by a forbidden raven, now stands over the Queen's private ash and prepares to choose fire. If that is not treason, Veyr has no law left. Lyra looked at the court. For 3 years, she had feared their faces, not because they were brave or wise, but because they had the power to make absence official. A noble's raised brow could become procedure. A regent's calm lie could become record. A king's silence could become a grave with no name. Not anymore. If your law can only survive by burning witnesses, she said, then let it die before I do. The chapel went silent. Kaelen's throat glowed. Lyra. She turned to him. Do not protect me from the sentence after letting me reach the fire. He stopped. The Queen's Ash witness opened its wings. Morkant saw his chance. Hear her. She admits she wants the law dead. No, Lyra said. I want the truth alive. She placed the melted nameplate on the casket lid. The brass softened into light. Gold ash curled around her fingers, and the Queen's old command shifted. The letters did not change, but their meaning deepened. Lyra understood then that choosing the fire did not mean choosing revenge. It did not mean choosing the throne. It did not mean choosing Kaelen's guilt, Morkant's fear, or the court's hunger for spectacle. It meant choosing whether her burned name would become a weapon or a witness. Kaelen saw the answer form in her face. What do you choose? He asked quietly. Lyra looked at him, then at Morkant, then at every person standing in the chapel of the erased. I choose to speak under my own name. Morkant's cane lifted. Stop her. Kaelen drew his signet blade before the wardens could move. Any man who touches her answers to the ash throne. Morkant's smile sharpened. You would raise steel for her now. Kaelen did not look away from the wardens. No, I raise it against what I allowed to stand before. The words entered the chapel and stayed there. Not forgiveness, but repair beginning to cost him blood. Lyra turned back to the casket. She lifted her chin. I am Lyra Noctis, she said, and the gold ash surged beneath her hands. Chamber servant to Queen Auralyn Veyr, bearer of her final command. Witness to the night her death was buried beneath court law. The casket cracked open. Black ash rose in a spiral. The Queen's Ash witness flew upward with a cry that shook dust from the chapel arches. The restored names on the urns burned brighter one by one, as if the dead themselves were making room for the truth. Inside the casket lay no bone, no crown, no jewel. Only a single ember shaped like a dragon's closed eye. Lyra reached toward it. Kaelen's voice came low. Only if you choose. She almost broke then. Not because he was too late. Because he finally understood that too late did not give him ownership of what came next. I do, she said. Her fingers touched the ember. The chapel vanished into white fire. When the light cleared, the lower ash chapel was no longer beneath the palace. It stood inside a memory. Queen Auralyn's chamber. The night of smoke. The bed curtains burned without flame. The ash-black casket lay open on the floor. Lyra's younger self stood near the door, terrified, clutching the Queen's final command. And beside the dying Queen stood a man with a black-sealed cane, Morkant Voss. The dragon ember opened its eye in Lyra's hand. Then Queen Auralyn's dragon witness rose from the ash and spoke. Now show them his hand. The memory obeyed the dragon before the court understood what it had heard. Queen Auralyn's chamber sharpened around them. Smoke without heat, curtains burning black at the edges. The ash-black casket opened near Lyra's younger hands. Every noble guard, scribe, and judge standing in the lower ash chapel saw the night Veyr Ash Court had buried beneath law. Morkant Voss stood beside the dying queen, not as regent, not as advisor, as the man holding her down with one hand while the black seal in his cane drank the dragonfire from the room. Kaelen made a sound that was not a word. The memory turned closer. The dragon witness showed Morkant's right hand, blackened fingertips pressed against Queen Auralyn's mouth, the regent's seal glowing beneath his palm. The queen's eyes were open, not helpless, furious. She pushed the ash-black casket toward young Lyra with the last strength in her body. "Take it," the queen whispered in the memory. "If he burns the court, Ash will remember." Young Lyra grabbed the casket. Morkant turned. His face in the memory was calm. "That was the worst part. You should have stayed unseen, little Ash girl," he said. The younger Lyra ran. The chamber vanished. They were back in the lower ash chapel, but the truth remained above them in white fire. Morkant's hand, Morkant's cane, Morkant's seal. Every detail hung in the air where no court could burn it quickly enough. No one spoke. The queen's dragon witness rose fully from the ash, not flesh, not bone, but an ancient dragon formed of queen gold flame and black memory. Its wings filled the chapel without touching the walls. Its eyes fixed on Morkant. "Royal murder witnessed," it said. "Name erased to protect the murderer." Morkant's face emptied. Then he smiled. "You think one ash memory saves a kingdom," he said. "Ask your king how many decrees he signed after her name vanished." The blow landed exactly where he aimed it. Kaelen did not look away. "No," he said. "It does not save me." The court turned toward him. He stepped into the white fire, the memory burning across his face. "I believed burned records because believing them protected my reign. I let a woman stand nameless beneath my throne because silence was easier to govern than truth." Lyra's throat tightened. She had wanted him to say something like that once. Now she only needed him to mean it. Kaelen drew the black gold signet blade from his belt and turned toward the ash scribes. "Record this before the throne and before Queen Auralyn's witness. Lyra Noctis was a lawful chamber servant bearer of the queen's final command and true witness to royal murder." One scribe dropped to his knees, writing with shaking hands. Kaelen faced the court. "Every silence decree signed after the queen's death is void. Every name burned under Morkant's regency is restored to living record. Every witness erased by ash law will be heard again." Morkant's smile sharpened. "You cannot kill a law by hating it." "No," Kaelen said, "but I can kill the hand that holds it." He raised the signet blade. Morkant lifted his cane, and the black seal flashed. The queen's ash witness flew first. The raven struck the cane with a cry like burning parchment. The dragon witness breathed queen gold fire over the black seal. Kaelen's blade came down through the flame. The cane split. The seal broke. All through Veyr Ash Court something answered, locks, opening records, unburning voices gasping out of ash. Morkant staggered as if the court itself had finally released what he had been forcing it to swallow. Guards seized him. He looked past them to Lyra. "You are still only a servant." Lyra stepped forward with a melted nameplate in her hand. "No," she said. "I was a servant when Queen Auralyn trusted me. I was a witness when you feared me. I was Lyra Noctis before your law learned how to burn." The restored names across the chapel brightened. Kaelen turned to her, then lowered his blade to the floor between them. "I owe you more than restoration," he said, "and I have no right to ask what you will give back." Lyra looked at him. There was the king who had silenced her. There was also the man standing in front of his court, cutting apart the law that protected him, letting his reign bleed truth in public. Both were real. Both would have to be lived with. "You owe the dead their names," she said. "Yes. You owe the living a court that can hear them before ravens and dragons must scream." "Yes. And you owe me the right to decide whether I remain in this palace after it stole 3 years of my life." Kaelen's face tightened, but he bowed his head. "Yes. No claim, no plea, only debt." The queen's dragon witness lowered its great head before Lyra. The queen's ash witness landed on her shoulder, its ember feathers warm against her cheek. The melted brass nameplate softened in her palm, reshaping itself into clean letters. Lyra Noctis. Not hidden, not burned, held. The queen's voice filled the chapel one final time. Witness honored. Lyra closed her fingers around her restored name. She did not kneel to the court. She did not thank the king for returning what should never have been stolen. She walked past Morkant, past the judges, past the nobles who could no longer pretend not to know her, and stopped beneath the open arch where dawn was beginning to silver the ash. Kaelen remained behind her, waiting. Not forgiven, not dismissed. Waiting. Lyra looked toward the waking sky. For the first time in 3 years, the world had a place for her name. What she did with that name would be hers.